So I figured a lot of people would want to see a video on how to fix the hat arm and the spinning arm. So when these things start making a ticking sound, that's when they're about to split. And if they don't move, of course, that's when the gears are broken. So today I'm going to show you how to do that. And first, what I'm doing here is I'm cutting the threads to the fabric on the back of the snowman. Now, you don't have to cut the whole snowman up for this. And usually there's just a line going down the back. You can see where the fabric parts. And if you pull it apart, there will be a thread there. And once you cut that thread, basically just keep pulling it apart and it'll just come apart. So here with the snowmen with the vests like this, where they're buttoned in the front, are sometimes hard to get off. So the best way to do that is just to lift up the hat arm, slide it up the arm, and then put it over top of the head. Now what I do here, I've got to take the 2 screws off to get the head off, because the 2004 to 5 models have, and 2003, sorry about that, they have a plastic head. The 2002 models do not have a head on them. They're just filled with polyester fibers, so they're a lot easier to fix, but these ones just have a plastic head on them. All of them after 2002. So you take 2 screws out for that, and basically that's it. That's like the last obstruction you have from getting to the rest of the body, because without the head off, you can't get the vest up, and without the vest up, you can't get to the rest of the body. So what I like to do is put some toilet paper around the hat mechanism to keep the oil and, or not the oil, the grease and like the rubber from the belt. I don't want that getting on the fabric, so I just put that around there to keep it clean. Here you can see I'm sliding the vest up the hat arm, and I'm going to put it over top of the front of the body. So now we have access to the back of the module, like that. So next, what we got to do, there are 2 pins, or shafts, whatever you want to call them, and there's a small washer on each one that you got to take off. Now on the 2002 models, they have these on both sides, and on the 2003 and after models, they have 2 short pins with teeth that go into the plastic, and you have to pry them out with a flathead screwdriver and then use a pair of channel locks to get them out. So they're not too hard to get out if you have the right tools. I used a very small kind of precision pliers to get that other washer off, and I just pull it out like that. So you want to pull the fabric down the hat arm a little bit, not all the way, just enough, and the spinning arm will slide out of the left side. So now we're up to the hat mechanism. The hat mechanism is in the top, and right here I accidentally started taking it apart, and I forgot about the shoulders. And you don't want to do that, because you will not be able to get the hat arm out without the shoulders being taken apart. So there are 4 screws in the shoulders, pretty easy to get to, and there are little, I don't know what you call them, almost like little fingers that hold the hat arm in place. You'll see them when you get there, but then there are ones with a curved indent, and those go around the studs for the other half of the hat mechanism, and I'll show that when I'm putting it back together. But I got the shoulders off, so there are 4 screws on the hat arm, and you want to take the belt off. Now right here, the pulley will just slide right out if the gear is split, which it did. So I'm going to take these 4 screws out next. And you want to put these in a bin or a metallic bowl, something where you won't lose them, because if you lose these, then you're done. That's it. I mean, unless you have other ones or old ones that were broken beyond repair that you have screws to that you could use. If you lose a screw to one of these, it's the end. So some screws you can find, but others you can't. Now these things do have circuits and stuff glued on the top, so you'll have to pry that glue off a little bit to open the mechanism in some instances. And right there is the gear. Now the gears are 8-tooth gears, 8-tooth motor shaft plastic gears. You can order them on eBay, Amazon, anywhere, and it may take a while because most of them come from China, but most of them arrive pretty quickly, and it is a very tight fit on the shaft, so I recommend putting the shaft in, and since there is a hole in the other side, when you get it back together, you push the shaft, and the shaft will go through the hole, but the gear won't, so it will line it up. And I did that there, as you can see. And another thing I'm doing here is to show you that the pulley is in fact spinning, the gears are meshing. I put that piece of tape on there because I didn't know how else to do it. Now another thing that I always do with the gears is when I put a new gear on, see the gears are dry. They don't have any lubricant on them. So I use Vaseline, and Vaseline is very, very similar to the original grease that they used on the gears. Almost identical. So I take that and I put it on the motor shaft gear because it spins very, very fast because the gear ratios keep going down as the gears get bigger. So the biggest gear ratio is with the drive gear, so you're going to need the most amount of grease. And I wipe it off the screwdriver so it won't get anything else greasy. It doesn't need to be. So anyways, it's nice and quiet now, and I'm going to put the screws back into the mechanism. And now that they're back in, it is good to go. And you put the belt back on, of course. Now, you do not want to over-tighten these because a lot of this plastic is very old, 20-year-old plastic, and sometimes the plastic that isn't the best in these depending on where they're stored. So a lot of times if the plastic is really dark yellow, that means that it's going to crack apart and it's not in very good shape anymore. But this is where I put the hat arm back into the shoulders, or the shoulder bracket, whatever you want to call it. Now, the screws will fall out if you're not careful. They just slide out real easily. Sometimes you have to jostle them around a little bit to get them to line up, like you see there. I've seen countless people have problems with these, though, and a lot of people, frankly, don't know how to fix them. Some people I've seen have tried before, because I've gotten a few of them that have been opened up, where they've tried to find out what's wrong, but this video, I hope, will solve a lot of problems people have been having with them. So, you just basically put these back into the hip plates, I guess you could say, and the one on the right, the pin on the right, just pushes back in. And if you've got decent strength, you'll be able to do it. Now what I'm doing here is I'm also fixing the spinning arm, which is the other main item because it is a snowflake spinning snowman. So therefore, if the spinning arm does not work, then it is no longer a snowflake spinning snowman. So what I'm doing here, I'm going to cut the arm up around where it meets the body. A lot of people want to cut these down the side of the arm to get to it, but that's not the way to do it because it shows a lot when you put it back together. So I just do it right where it meets the body because that's where it shows the least. Because you have the vest going around there, so it kind of covers up any fault that you might have when stitching it back. And that's another thing, a lot of people don't stitch these back because they don't know how. And I'll show that at the end of the video. But basically, you just pull the fabric down and you get to the spinning arm. Now, the spinning arm is going to have a cover on it for the 2003 and up models. The 2002 ones have gear-driven mech with no belt or anything, no pulleys. And those take an 8 or 9 tooth gear. I've seen them with both for some reason. But anyways, those ones, they're very similar, but they have a couple extra gears. That's it. That's all that's different with them. And they also have a little motor in them. They don't have a cylindrical motor. They have a toy motor or whatever it is that you find in a lot of toys. So those are a little bit weaker and more faulty. But the 2003 and up models, they are pretty much all belt-driven models. So here it is. It's open. And I'm going to put the shaft in that gear because the shaft almost always falls out. And this mechanism takes 10-tooth gears, and they're the same plastic motor shaft gear as the 8-tooth, except they have 10. Now, if you have a lot of Jimmy items like this, they are gonna have split gears at some point if they don't already. And all the gears you're gonna need for these are the 8, 9, and 10-tooth gears. And on some very rare occasions, you'll run into a 12-tooth gear. Now, I have not yet to date seen an 11-tooth gear or a 7-tooth or 13 or whatever, like anything like that. But I have seen 12 tooths. So you're going to need 8, 9, and 10-tooth gears. And the 12-tooth gears, they just, I don't know, sometimes you see them and sometimes you don't. Now, the spinning arm pulley shaft, it goes in really, really, really tight. So I'm going to have to get a screwdriver, like I did there, to push it back. That's what I have to do a lot, because that's the only way to push the gear back in, is to put the mechanism together and push the pulley in, because otherwise you'll damage the teeth on the gear if you try to do it with some kind of pliers or something like that. And then you cannot do it with your fingers. It fits too tight to do it with fingers. So unless the mechanism and the plastic is really bad and yellowed, you won't be able to do it at all. So anyways, that is back together now, and I've got to put the cover back on it. And that's something that you don't want to lose, is the cover. I've lost the cover several times, and I've had to make cardboard ones and tape them on. And trust me, you do not want to lose it. It's an irreplaceable thing that you absolutely need. Now, the gear-driven mechanisms, they just have a flat face on them. They don't have pulleys or anything. So those ones you don't have to worry about a cover, because they don't have one. All the gears are contained inside the mechanism. So now you slide the pin back through, and what I usually do is I slide the spinning arm back and forth. It has 2 notches you can slide the pin through, and you want to make sure it lines up on the front, going through the arm, and then through the back. And I want to always check to make sure that the arm doesn't come out. I pull on it to make sure it's in there. Now right here, I'm pulling the fabric up around the item, and I'm putting the vest back basically the opposite way that I did before. So now the vest is back over top. You don't have to worry about the vest being over it before you sew it, because you can just lift it up. It's not a very tight fit. Now the head, there's always a crack in the head, so you can pull it apart to get it over the mechanism. That's always going to be there. And if you see that, don't be alarmed. It's not broken. It's supposed to be like that. So that's completely normal for most of them. Like I said, the 2002 models, they do not have the head, so you don't have to worry about it for those. Those ones, they just have a little, they have a cover on the hat arm pulleys, just like the spinning arm pulleys in the 2003 and up models. And those ones have a little tiny, just a thin fabric sleeve that goes over top of the mechanism, just so the polyester fibers can't get in the wires or anything like that. So they're pretty easy. You just put the head back over like that. Not a big deal with any of the models. Now, what I'm doing here is I'm showing how to sew these up. And what I always do is I lick the end of the thread to make sure that it is stiff and long enough, and it'll stay up. It won't like flop around or anything like that. Because when you put it through the eye of the needle, it's kind of difficult to do sometimes. So that's why I always lick it and get it a little bit wet, so it'll go through there easily. And then I take it through twice to make a double thread, because that's always better than one. Because one thread, single thread, always snaps. It's always happened. So I tie it in a knot, and then I go around and do another knot. And I try to do 3 knots and double them up on top of each other. So when you put them through, not only does that keep the 2 threads aligned, but it also keeps the thread there. So you don't have to tie a big elaborate knot to try to keep the thread in. So what I do is I do what's called a mattress stitch. And what that is it's where you try to get the rough edge of the fabric pointing inwards, because a lot of people, what they try to do is they will try to bring the two ends together and just go straight up with it. And I think I'll demonstrate that in a minute. I'm doing a voiceover. I'm not talking while I film. So right there, that's not what you do. You have to go in and then go over top. You go on the right side, you put it in, and you go down in the fabric and then back up out. And then on the other side, you put the thread over top of the fabric, not down inside. And then you basically do the same thing you do on the right side. So if you watch closely, you'll see what I'm talking about. It's kind of hard to explain. And you also don't want to pull it out really far. You don't want to put the threads out super duper far and cram the mechanism in there. I think I showed that just a second ago, but you want to get as little fabric as you can left over from the stitch, because that'll just leave for a nicer stitch, and it'll leave more room for the mechanisms to operate. So that's always what you want to do for something like that. And if there's any kind of bumpy area, you just go over it with the string, and pretty much covers it up, and it's pretty much perfect after that. And what I always like to do is I stick the needle through the fabric, and then I tie a knot with the loop that's left over. And I do that several times to ensure that it's nice and tight. And I just finished the head, and you want to make sure that it's nice and tight, no holes anywhere. Now, at the edge of the old stitching, if you don't pull it down, there might be a hole there, but that's no big deal. Now, right there, as you can see, it started to tear going down the arm a little bit. Some of the threads came out. So what I do there is I just start the stitch right there, and then I go up. And I always make sure to keep the stitches close to each other. Like, you don't want to space it out a lot, because then it will get baggy and it will leave a bunch of wrinkles, and it will also leave holes. So you want to get them really close together. You don't want to go up too far on the next stitch that you make. So whatever you do, just keep it close. Do the mattress stitch like I was talking about, because that makes them look like they've never been opened. And if you have trouble doing it, then let an experienced person do it in your family, perhaps maybe a parent, somebody like that. And it's pretty easy to figure out if you research it and you practice at it a lot, because it took me a while to get this good anyways. And I've gone back and restitched several of my items that I repaired a few years ago. So it's important to make it look as best as possible, because I like doing that. And then right here, it's hard to get underneath of the arm because it was still unstitched right there. But right here, I just bring the stitch back up. And if you're going down in another direction from an area that still needs to be stitched, you don't just bring the string back up and then start sewing. You have to bring the string back through the fabric, because it'll not work out good, and it won't be tight and strong. So up here, I'm just tying another knot in the top of it and making sure that's nice and tight. And this one, I haven't mentioned it yet, but these ones kind of have an advantage because they don't give it away as much. Like the snowflake spinners with the curly fabric on like the Blue Vest ones, or the fuzzy fabric like this, it's kind of better because you don't see the stitch marks as much as you would on a really short-haired one. But there we have it, and it is finished. So thank you very much for watching the video, and Don't forget to like and subscribe. I know a lot of people probably wanted to see this, but thank you for watching this long if you have, and thanks again, and happy Thanksgiving.